Joe, you want to hear a story?
Okay.
I think you're going to appreciate this one because it has to do with windows and doors. So, this was early on when I was at the window and door company. We got a call, and part of our job was to service even some old things that we would get calls about for the windows and doors. So, it was, we'll skip the manufacturer. It was just probably from the early 2000s, and we had a whole bunch of little crap around the house where it was like screws were loose. It was just older. It's been in use, whatever. There's one window, though, that they were having some trouble with, and it's a casement window, which a casement window is the crank-out windows. So you unlock the keepers, and then you crank it out, and it has that slow open. So there's a track underneath the bottom that allows it to, the arm pushes it out. So they were having issues where it wouldn't open all the way, so we were running our hands underneath, and we found, it looks like there's a screw that is in the wrong place. So we were going to try and take it out. So this is probably, like 30 inches from the floor or something like that. And all of a sudden, it was that, and then, it was up top. For whatever happened at the top, for the guide bar, it let go, and we're on the second story. The whole casement window just starts, like, dropping. So I've got my hands right there, so I'm able to grab it. So I've got this panel in my hands that's probably about 18 inches by 30 to 36 inches that I'm just holding there. The wall is pressed against my arm, so I am just stuck, like, right here. The guy that I was with, he was like, "Oh, shit!" And we didn't have, like, all of our stuff up there, the hardware, or we didn't have the, like, ladder or step stool that he could get up there and grab it and reattach it. So he's like, "The ladder's in the truck," and it's not comfortable right there. I'm just like, "Go." So he leaves the room. I'm just sitting there. And from where I'm just stuck, I can see the truck. So I'm waiting, and then all of a sudden I see him run out. He's unstrapping the ladder as fast as he can, and then he runs back up, gets back up there, was able to, when he got there, I was just like, "Dude, just grab it." Like, my arms are just waiting to just go at this point. And I just know, like, if I let this go, the whole hardware's done. That window is going to smash into God knows what at the ground, and we're going to have to fill a hole in this dude's house after he's like, "Can you guys come fix my stuff?" So, his name's JR. JR was able to grab that window, give me a second, and then we were able to get everything done. But it was hilarious just as far as, like, I'm just sitting right there, all of a sudden something just clicks, and then bam, like, you're just stuck and just hopelessly waiting for help.
Gotta do more bicep curls.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Don't envy those situations.
No.
I had a keeper go through my hand doing the same exact thing in a very cold place up north that you're familiar with.
Yep. Yeah.
Not fun. Don't envy it.
No. Well, today we've got a couple different faces on. We spent a little time talking about real estate with Mason a couple weeks ago. Wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about construction. So we're just going to jump right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sledgehammers in the Office podcast, where we celebrate the heavy hitters on the job site and in the office. Today, I'm joined by my brother, Malachi Klaus. What are we drinking?
Elijah Craig whiskey mixed with Canada Dry ginger ale.
Joseph Morris.
We got the Rockstar whipped strawberry today.
And Luis Ortega. What are we drinking?
Jasmine tea.
There we go.
He's also sharing whiskey with me as well.
And then, as always, the one, the only, Shamrock chocolate milk, whole milk, not that 1% crap. We're going to go around the table, kind of talk to these guys about what they do. So we'll start with Malachi and work our way back around as far as what are you doing currently? What have you done previously? We don't need you to name employers, but kind of just speak to what job experience you had previously that kind of brought you to where you are now, what you do, what's unique about what you're doing.
All right, I am a journeyman electrician. Right now I work for the power utility company. I'm in the distribution maintenance side of things, so servicing all of the substations and working on anything from 12,000 volt breakers up to 69,000 volt transformers, breakers, transformer protectors, and disconnects. A lot of my job is just we go through and do preventative maintenance, and or we get emergency call-outs if something goes bad in the night. I've been doing electrical for 6 years now, I think. 5 or 6 years. I started in 2017. Got hired on with a small residential company. They put me through my first 2 years of the apprenticeship. Went with them. When I kind of saw some things I didn't like with the company, how it was going, I jumped ship and went to an industrial company. Finished my apprenticeship there, topped out. I stayed with them for a few months. Probably, I think I topped out in April or May, and then I left them in November.
What does topped out mean?
I and finished my apprenticeship. Yeah, I finished my apprenticeship, graduated, got my journeyman's card. So topped out and went to the utility, which I've been there for just over a year. And so definitely like that one. Challenges on that would be the learning curve, because when you're learning residential and commercial and industrial, you don't know anything about the the power side of things in the utility. There's just a whole different kind of world. And even from industrial down to residential, it's a whole different world. You're working with Romex in a residential house, you're working with pipe and wire and a lot of just different like things in automation. The bigger systems you go, it's more automation, a lot more confusing as compared to the residential stuff. So the utility was a lot of a big learning curve. Still is a learning curve. Like there's so much you can learn in it. Like I'm nowhere near to being an expert in that field. But I love what I do now, so I'm definitely happy where I'm at and think I made the right choice going there.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Joe, you've been on the podcast for a while, but you want to share with the people a little bit of what you do and how you got there?
Primarily windows and doors, and I got into the position I am just because of a feeler that my good friend put out for me. I ended up working with Thaddeus over here we worked for a little bit over a year, I think. Maybe a little bit under.
I thought it was like 6 months.
It was more than that. Had to have been. We were there. We spent some good times in the F-150,
Time flies when you're having fun.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just worked on a bunch of crazy houses, some smaller ones, you're talking anywhere from 800 square foot to upwards of 30,000 to 40,000 square foot residential homes. Just a lot of really cool stuff, basically. Turning screws on some of the bigger doors I've ever seen in my life. But that's pretty much it. Nothing too special about it other than that.
And what were you doing before that?
Automotive, I guess, was the best way to put it. Retail parts, but it was kind of a weird situation. I worked with a Fortune 500 company that had a lot of really weird irons and a lot of really weird fires, everywhere from state DPS, where I'd watch inmates work on cars, to a couple of rideshare companies that we dealt with, one of which I got to know pretty intimately, and I actually spent some time in one of their garages actually helping them get just about anything under the sun, from the wiper blades to an entire rear quarter panel that needed to be welded on. But outside of that, yeah, it was pretty much everything automotive, and then everything windows and doors now.
Yeah. So with windows and doors, obviously I know what you're doing, but if you want to describe to people as far as, are you doing install, are you taking care of stuff?
We are fixing things. Whether they get put in a different way than maybe it should be put in, or sometimes we're fixing old stuff, or sometimes parts didn't come from the manufacturer. Just making things work better than they did before is the goal ultimately when I walk into a house.
So a lot of service?
Yeah, a lot of service, almost primarily, and then residential, almost exclusively, actually. We've done one commercial stop since I've been on, as far as I can recall.
What do we count Sedona as?
Oh, you know what? I guess there has been a couple. That's right. I don't want to remember that one. That was a bad one.
That was a fun time.
It was a good time. I got that man door working, though.
Yeah, that's... So before we get to Luis, the story with that is there's a community up in Sedona, and it's in the back part of Sedona. Like when you're driving there, you lose cell reception like 2 miles out, and it's like a resort that you stay at or some kind of timeshare thing, and they've got a bike shop there and a trail. I don't even know what it is.
Trail house bike shop where
Yeah.
they basically set you up to rent a bike and go ride around in Sedona. And there's even horse trails out there, so it's that far remote. You can see some horses walking around as you're riding your rented mountain bike.
Yeah. So most of the doors that you deal with in a construction basis, or the large doors even in a lot of these large residential homes, they're made of aluminum. So they've got the aluminum frames and all that. So there's also the option to do steel. Now, steel is a lot more expensive because it's heavier. There's a lot more that goes into it, and it's just a more expensive material to begin with. But this trail shop went and they got the steel windows and doors. So they had two entrance and exit double doors, and then there's this one door off the bike shop that was like a single man door. So we got sent up there a couple times to do some adjustments. There were issues up there that we were tasked with taking care of. So I'd worked on that single man door probably I think I'd worked on it 3 different days that I was up there, and I could always make it a little bit better with the operation, but I couldn't get it. And I was so, like, at a certain point, like, we just thought the installers did it so incorrectly that we were screwed. Well, Joe and I got sent up with our friend Bobby and our friend Jerome, who they were also in the company. We got sent up there overnight because we had punch list items. And we were working on the 2 sets of doors. Joe went to go work on that single man door. And I was like, dude, I don't think there's anything you can do. But he's all like, let me just take a shot at it. Like, you guys are busy. Let me just take a shot at it. It's like, all right. He comes back like 15 minutes later. He's like, I got it working. I'm like, shut up. He's like, no, I did. I'm like, there is no fucking way that this dude figured it out. Like, because at the point, like, I've been on probably a year longer than Joe has. So I'm like, there's no way this guy figured it out when I couldn't. Go over there, sure as shit, it's swinging just perfectly, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you did, but great job. So, yeah, it was a fun time. All right, Luis.
Yes.
What do you do? What have you done? What's unique about your job?
I am an electrical apprentice inside wireman. Before I got into this, I was remodeling homes, and I did a little bit of everything: piping, plumbing, and the electrical stuff. And I was really interested in the electrical stuff, and I just decided to pursue that. It really interested me. And
Let me pull the microphone just a little closer.
And now I'm on my 2nd year of the apprenticeship, and I'm really enjoying it, learning a lot of new stuff.
Nice. So with the apprenticeship, like Malachi kind of mentioned, that's working towards your journeyman card?
Yes.
Awesome. So,
Nice.
And then what are you able to do once you have that journeyman's card?
Well, my goal would be traveling, going out different states, and just having fun traveling out there.
Okay. Because like when someone goes to get their general contractor's license, that was something I was applying for.
Yeah.
Like mine specifically goes for the state of Arizona. Does your journeyman's card specifically work for Arizona, or how does that work?
I believe some states you have to also get licensed, but most of them that are close around Arizona, you don't have to. I know California, you have to get a license. Portland, you have to get a license. Washington.
But is that like the license or the journeyman's card?
Separate license.
Okay.
I think it's different though too when you're getting your union ticket, because
Mhm.
when you top out, you get a union ticket saying you're a journeyman, and so with that ticket, you can go anywhere in the country and work for an IBEW company with that journeyman's ticket.
What's the IBEW?
International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. So
Okay.
that's the union.
Okay.
And so when you're going through 640, right?
Yeah.
So when you top out of the 640 apprenticeship, you're going to be a journeyman. You get your journeyman's card from Arizona, signed by the governor and everything, which doesn't really do anything for you because it is a right to work state. Like, you're not required to have a journeyman's card. Like, if you want to be licensed in Arizona, you go and take your like electrical contractor's license.
Yep.
But if you want to get your journeyman's card, that's like a legal card, you go to a different state. Like he said, you can go to Oregon, California, something. But with your union ticket, you can take that anywhere, I'm pretty sure, where the IBEW is, and you just go sign the books there, and you can work for the union there, and you have your ticket. You don't have to go through the apprenticeship anymore because they've seen, okay, you did the 640 apprenticeship, whatever one you did here. There are multiple union apprenticeships, but if you did that, you're an inside wireman journeyman. You're good. They recognize it there. So
Yep.
that's the difference with the union, which is kind of nice.
Gotcha. Okay. Nice. All right. Well, we've got a slate of topics to get into, but before we do that, we're going to talk about our stats that I typically forget. So on the housing side, Maricopa County has 13,932 homes available right now. That's down about 1,900 from last month. We've closed 4,132 in the last 30 days, which is only down 90. Interest rate with a 1-point buy down from one of our lenders is going to be a 6.125%. So feel free to reach out to us about that, and we can get you connected with the lender on that side. Our materials that we'll reference 2x4s, they're at $3.25 a stud, down 30 cents. Plywood, $13.30, down $3.80. And then the Romex, which when Malachi saw that one, he was taking exception to. So I've got that listed as far as in the last month. That one hasn't changed. For a 1,000-foot spool, it's 47 cents a foot. So I know you mentioned that you want to talk about the materials a little bit and what you've seen with that.
Yeah, so, well, I was just surprised 47 cents a foot. I think that's like a lot different in your 1,000-foot spools. Like when you buy things in bulk, you get a lot better deal. Because when you sent over some of the stuff we're talking about, I was like, oh, I wonder like how much our material cost has grown. Like I didn't want to just speak out of turn. 'Cause I know because I do a lot of side work. So I have my job in utility, but I also do a lot of side work. I help out family, friends, and just a lot of references, you know. And so bidding jobs is a big deal on all that stuff. And previously when you bid a couple of years ago, it was a lot easier because your cost was consistent. Your material you could consistently find. And then, but the problem now is, one, you can't find the material you always need. Your breakers are missing all the time. And two, the cost of it. So I was looking up the cost of stuff, and I looked up Gordian.com, and I guess there's supposed to be some really good data from Gordian, the leader in facility and construction cost data. And I was looking at tracking the cost of copper after a spike of copper in 2019. It's been steadily increasing over 2 years. And they said a 67% increase since the third quarter of 2020 on number 10 THHN, which is a really common wire size. You know, so like 14.2 is what probably most common in your homes, residential. But number 10 is super common in residential and commercial applications. So 67% increase in the copper price for that. And your conduit prices gone up, I think he said 54% since the fourth quarter of 2020.
Yeah, some of my coworkers tell me when they do side work that when they do the bids, their bids are only good for a month because of the price of everything just going up and changing.
Yeah. Mine good are 30 to 60 days. If I like the person, I do 60. But if it's like if they're like, oh, I might do it, I might not, I'll be like, well, this is good for 30 days because if you hit me up in 3 months, 4 months,
it's gonna be way
different. Like I did a quote for a guy. He wanted a hot tub and a sub panel, you know, and his main panel's on like the northeast side, and he wants everything on the southwest side. I'm like, dude, that's over 100 foot of 2 runs of like 6'3" Romex and conduit. If we're doing conduit, I was like, I gave him a bid. It was around $6,000, and I think he just ignored me. He thought I was trying to rip him off. I was like, dude, my material alone is going to cost $3,000, just with how the cost of both those runs over there and the conduit and setting your panel. And I was like, and trenching and needing a helper. I was like, you know, and I told him, I said, you can go buy it yourself, and I'll just charge you for labor. Because I do that a lot now on these side jobs. I'll just tell them, hey, if you don't like what I give you for a quote, I'm not trying to rip you off. You can go get the material yourself. I will give you a list. But the problem is, if you get all the stuff and anything's missing, you're still paying my labor per hour for me to go and get the rest of the material that's correct, and I'm charging you for that material. So, like, you might save money on it, but you might not. And some people are like, just go get the material itself.
Yeah.
And just like even the copper cost, I looked up over the last 2 years. 2019, we're at $2.72 a pound. 2020, $2.80 a pound. 2021, $4.25 a pound. 2022, down to $4 a pound. But since 2019, we're up from $2.70 to $4. $1.30 a pound in copper. Yeah. And you think about how far these wire runs are, that's like hundreds of pounds of copper when you're pulling all that stuff. That makes a big difference. Yeah.
I know that talking to some of the guys we've had on the podcast previously, that they'll mention how their bids are good for 14 days. In some cases.
14.
Yep.
Dang.
So
That's short.
Part of it is they gotta protect some of what they're doing. So, like we've had people on here as far as like for the windows and doors for gas station canopies or for well pumps, and I know for some of those guys, I've only talked to some of them about it, but that's a ton of material that they're getting into. So it's for them, it's any small increment where it's like, hey, that's gonna jump. You want something for a hot tub. But then you go to like, hey, I want a gas station canopy, or I want a whole house package, or whatever it's going to be, that like that escalates by tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if you're buying the right window and door package. So
yeah, and material cost like can just go up like that overnight, basically.
Yep.
Especially if they're scarce, like, and you have a client that, like, you're on a time frame, like bigger companies, excuse me, they're looking at, all right, we need this done. We schedule it. If your material's not in town, well, now we got to get expedited. We got to pay extra for it to be here. You know, it's like now you're just kind of getting screwed on all the costs, which is, just a tough position for everyone to be in.
For the window and door company, we were at the suppliers that we were working with. There were some suppliers that were very professional, and they'd say, hey, we're going to have a price increase. This is like when the whole supply chain and all that crap was going on, that they would say, in 2 weeks, that's going to be the deadline for any orders. They're going to be going up in price. And then there were some that were a little, I don't know, it's just not polite. And it's overnight, all of a sudden, boom, the price has gone up like 15, 20%. And you're just like, oh, like I've quoted an entire house package for someone, and now I've got to go back to them and be like, I was going to order this the minute I walked in and found out that
It's an increase.
yes, yeah. So it's nuts.
Yeah, it can just be tough when you're trying to, like, even because when COVID was happening and, like, you know, they're like, oh, just the supply chain, everything's down. You'd go into a Home Depot. If you're not going to supply houses, you go to Home Depot to get your stuff, right, for a side job, or even companies do that a lot. And you'd walk in there and you'd see, like, there's no conduit on the wall. There's no breakers on the wall.
A lot of stuff missing.
And you're like, I quoted this guy for, let's say, 3/4 conduit, and I'm like, the smallest conduit they have here is an inch, and it goes from like $11 a stick to $22 a stick. That quarter inch difference in cost was $11 to $22 a stick. And you're like, well, now I can't even get the right breaker. Like, I'd be putting the wrong brand breaker in to get someone to have power temporarily, and be like, when I get this one in stock, I will come back and replace it for free. Just give me 5 minutes, come over, replace it, and they'll be like, that's fine. And I have now breakers at my house. I've just been saving every time I see one, like, oh, that's a rare one. Just grab it from the store, buy it. It's at my house now, just in case.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting seeing inflation, the way it's affecting not even just us as people who are purchasing things, but when you go into a retailer, like one of the stores I used to work at when I did auto parts, I talked to some of the managers, and they're like, yeah, we're $500,000 ahead of our annual quota. And it's not because we're selling more, because our sales are actually down. It's because everything's so much more expensive that we're just blowing the doors off of our old quotas because we've never seen prices this high. And they're not going to adjust for that, I don't feel like, when it comes time to renew the annual quota for next year. And they're just going to say, okay, these are your numbers you got to hit.
Yeah.
Even if that inflation's still not there. So, I mean, the way everything's skyrocketing, it's insane.
Yeah. I don't think the prices are going to come back down, like, on anything. Like, I don't, like, people think vehicles are going to come back down, houses, people think, like, material for jobs, and I'm like, I look at trucks a lot, and I'm like, because I want to buy a new truck all the time, and I'm like, man, I'm never going to be able to afford a brand new truck. Those things are now, $90,000. My material's up so much, like, houses are up. You're like, when do you actually see this? Because if companies realize they're like, we're making this. People still people still buy it when we sell it at this high of a rate. Yeah. Why lower it? You know?
Which I think it goes back to the copper prices that you looked at, as far as it was in the below 3 and then peaked at 480, and now we're at 4 right now.
I think it peaked at 425.
425.
Yeah,
now we're
I think
at 4.
So. We're at 4. Yeah, we've come down 25 cents from the year.
Right. So as far as that might be where we settle back to, and that's kind of what we've been talking about on the real estate side, and so is the construction side as well. That, like, I know because I was following it very closely for the housing side for real estate, that things skyrocketed and people were like, is it going to crash? And it was like, most likely not, but what's most likely going to happen is prices are going to come back down to a certain point, and then we'll kind of hit that normal appreciation again. And that's what we've seen. And I'm guessing that's what we're going to see with a lot of these materials, where everything peaked out, where it's like, I can't get a truck, I can't get conduit, I can't get all these things. So everyone's like, all right, well, you'll pay a premium if you really need it, but when that starts to ebb down, they're not reverting back to what it was before. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be some kind of margin that it falls to, but it's not going to be, hey, if we wait for 2 years, we can get the prices that we had back in 2018, 2019.
But we'll see it kind of close the gap a little bit and hopefully level out.
And I think it's that game of chicken right now, where where are we on that scale? Because we've seen that with housing prices, like for here in Arizona, we've talked about it previously, that in May, the median purchase price peaked out at $540,000 a house for Maricopa County. And it went to $500,000 by September. And then I think October was $499,000. So you saw this slide that was in larger increments, and then it was like $1,000 change. So it's like, all right, is that the end, or is that just a temporary thing? But you never exactly know where's that bottom before, all right, this is the new normal.
Was the interest rate up though during that time? So people were like, well, we buy this house and interest rate's high, or like we can buy this house because the interest rate was going up, and they were like the average cost of home bought, then they'd go lower. Would that have something to do with it or no?
So the interest rates definitely did, but we saw the inventory go up quite a bit. So yes, a lot of it played into that. So we've got a lot of realtors kind of playing this game of, as soon as they're waiting for, as soon as the inventory drops, they think that they're going to have just their phone flooded with people saying, hey, I'm ready to buy now, which that might be true. But I think that's going to be two parts, because we drove the prices to insanity, which I think ended in about May of this year. And then we had a lot of these interest rate increases on top of that, which really affected the monthly payment. So that kind of kicked a lot of people out of the market. If that interest rate comes down, now people can start paying that monthly payment. So you'll have people back. And yes, that might kind of bounce things around, but I don't think it's going to just be to the moon like it was for 2 years.
A lot of real estate talk on a construction podcast.
I was just thinking that.
You asked the question.
I know. I was like, fuck, I'm talking to the real estate guy. We're all idiots in construction talking about real estate.
Yeah, like we know how to sell houses.
Yeah. Like the other guys in your office, your list is like, those fucking morons.
Which in some ways, like what we have done before, is the part that I like is we've got Joe, who's not in real estate, so it kind of balances us out like in the previous episodes, to say like, hey, if we start talking a certain jargon, like, do you know what we're saying? Because if not, then it's like, oh, like we're just being a bunch of nerds together. So I think in some ways kind of shoes on the other foot with them at times where they don't know what we're talking about.
When it comes to tools and like,
yeah, that was hilarious last week.
Like they don't know what a screwdriver is.
Yeah.
They know what a screwdriver is, but as far as like cost of tools and stuff like that, we're rattling stuff off, and they're like,
difference between a drill and an impact driver.
right.
One makes a noise, the other one really doesn't.
Yeah, but like, I think it's even a good conversation to have as far as, what do you guys see as far as the expectations that people on the outside of the construction industry have of the people in the trades that you've interacted with, what it kind of seems like the general consensus is, and we'll kind of just let it go from there.
Feels like people think we're just going to be a lot faster than we actually are, as far as like expectations from whether it be homeowners, builders, superintendents, whoever it might be. I think it's really cool to like talk to these people, and you know, you probably don't, maybe you don't deal with homeowners necessarily, maybe on side jobs.
I
but
do on side jobs, yeah.
Yeah, just the expectations are a lot higher than they really ought to be, and a lot of people like to blame, you know, the salesman or whoever. You know, it's like, oh man, all this pressure's coming from these guys that are selling these jobs or whatever. The reality is just like no one out there really wants to do the work. If it's like a manpower thing, or when it comes to actually you being on site and getting something done, people are just, you know, they want everything done as fast as possible, and that's been a pretty bad detriment for doing anything productively and well.
Do you ever have customers like freak out at you when it's like not your fault and kick you out or like yell at you and stuff?
I've not. Well, actually, you know what? I haven't been kicked out, but I did have an older couple. This is the only time it's happened too, where they heard that a job that I was working on was going to get done a very specific way from someone who wasn't actually going to show up and do the job, and I had to I had to fill the shoes, right? So I ended up getting there, and I'm about ready to start turning screws and everything like that. And as I turned my screwdriver for the very first time on that one door, they go, "Hey, what are you doing?" Like, what do you mean? Well, so-and-so said he was going to do it like this. Well, congratulations, I'm not so-and-so, and I do a pretty good job, so I'd like to make sure that I give you guys the best justice possible on this very expensive entry door you have and make it work. Well, I don't like it. That's fair. You know, I'm not gonna hold anything against you for that. But I just want to make sure that you guys understand that if you're telling me I can't do it this way, then I can't do anything for you. There's going to be the other guy that comes back, and I can't tell you when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you need to get it here right now. No, I'm going to pack my tools up and I'm going to leave. They're like, no, you're going to leave your tools here, and when he gets here, he can take them back to you. That's not how this works.
Are they your personal tools?
Yeah, no, they were company
Okay,
tools, but
yeah.
it's like I have other things to do. Like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
people that actually want me to work on their homes today.
Yeah.
And I have other priorities to get to. And at that point, I was just like, hey, you know, do me a favor. Don't ask for me to come back because I'm not going to come back. Just to be upfront with you right now, you guys are not treating me like anyone should ever be treated in this kind of field, especially considering the fact that I'm fixing the front door to your home, so it works.
Yeah.
Those are some of the best. But I've only had one that bad. That specific instance was the worst so far. But I've had a lot of people ask me like, why is it taking so long? Why isn't this done yet? Why isn't that done? I don't have everything I need, and no one told me half of the issues. When you guys called and told us what we needed to come out here and do, you doubled that list in the time frame of that phone call being made to me walking in the door. So yeah, it's gonna take a little while.
Mm-hmm.
What about you guys?
Luis?
I guess just with the general contractors and the supervisors with
General contractors are saints.
All of the time.
No, they're not.
no, they're not in the field. They don't know.
They know enough about electrical they can get by in a house, and they're like, you can just do it this way. And we're like, yeah, sure, if you want the house to burn down.
Yes.
Wire the neutral into the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ground it
do
to the
that.
rebar.
Well, you do that.
Into the structure of the house?
Yeah, you ground a UFER on the house.
Oh, good.
There's a piece of number 4 copper that goes from the panel down to the rebar in the house. It's called your UFER.
Okay, I was like, wait a minute. Like, there's copper involved. Okay, I was talking about going straight through concrete, like hammer drilling into concrete directly to rebar.
General contractors.
Yeah. Just there's so many variables in the job that they think, or some of them think that it's just easy and you can get it done a certain way, and it's just not. This is not gonna happen.
Yeah. I think one of the big things for, like, if you're working with existing, if you're getting called in to tear something out, you're going to find something that makes your life a lot harder. Because at the end of the day, like, we're problem solvers, right? So it's, hey, here's what you need to do. You need to get this done, and there's a step 1, 2, 3 in regards to how to get there. Well, what most people don't realize is that step 1, 2, and 3 also have an A, B, and C to it that sometimes we need to get creative with. So the way I was told about some of it is like sometimes you need to build something like you hate the next guy that's going to come work on it because you need to make it solid, you need to make it right. And every once in a while, you get caught being the next guy who's working on it, and you're like, mother of God, what did you guys do to this thing that we've got to change out? Then you've got expectations from the customers, the project managers, whoever, that are saying, this should be straightforward. You go in, you take this out, you put the new one in. Do you want me to show you how to do it? It's like, if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I would say the hard thing, like, because I do side work, so that's not my main source of income. So I think you have a different, I have different kind of looks on it from other people, because I think some people can see it as the way the customer relationship with the contractor, whether it be electrical contractor, general, handyman, whatever you do, plumber, whatever you do, you can look at it like, hey, my customer provides my way of living, so I have to treat them with respect. Customer's always right, just kind of be super, super nice, and kind of just let them do their thing. Or you can be a little opposite, I'm providing you a service that you don't know how to do because I know skilled labor. You may be skilled in other things, but I know skilled labor and I know how to do this, so I'm providing a service to you. Or you can kind of have that middle ground, hey, you're providing me money, I'm providing you a service, we have this mutual respect. So when you show up and they don't respect your time frame, they don't respect your bid, they don't respect your work, and they're like, well, you can just do it like this, or it's just no, I have to do it this way to uphold code, to do it correctly, or even just being treated like less than compared to other guys. Like, oh, I wanted to give you a chance to bid it in case, you wanted it. It's like, well, I'm going to go to sleep tonight just fine if I don't get this job. I don't need to come work on your home,
Yep.
I try and be respectful to everyone. Like, because if electrical is dangerous, you got to do it safely for the next guy. You got to do it correctly. I want to be respectful to them so they know I did it well and stuff like that. But there's a level of respect that you want people to have with you because you're giving it to them, being on time, giving accurate quotes, doing everything right, and people just expect, well, you can do it cheaper or faster. It's like, I could do it cheaper or faster, but then I wouldn't be doing it to the best of my ability, and I'm not going to do that. Like a lot of people are like, well, it should cost what, like X amount of dollars? Like they already have a preconceived notion what it's going to cost, and I'm like, if you think it's going to cost that much, you can definitely try it yourself. But I'm not going to do it that way,
Yep.
And it's not because I want more money from you. It's because I'm going to do it correctly, which takes more time.
Yep.
And the material costs is expensive, like we just talked about, So I think expectations from the outside is like, some people are great to work for. I've had some people that are like, whatever you need, they do it. They're like, I want it done correctly. If you're going to do it correctly, we get it done. Other people want to barter, want to argue with you, don't respect your time or your trade, and that can be annoying and irritating, especially at that point.
Yeah, and I think there's like the respect part. There's a couple sides to that, right? Because in some ways, I know we've talked about before that the conception of people in the trades is that you're one of a couple things: uneducated, on drugs, have done drugs previously, been to jail. It's you either have one or a combination of those. And in a lot of cases, that's true. Like, I'm sure that every single one of us is probably currently working with someone who's fits one of those categories. So there's a part where, yeah, people can look at the trades and like have a certain warped perspective of it. But I think there's also, like, I think we're examples of the generation that's coming up in the trades. There's not a lot of us, but there's some of us that are like, no, like, we're respectable people. We handle ourselves in a certain way. We're here to do a job, and like you said, to do it to the best of our abilities. We're not here to just rake someone over the coals with a price or try and drag it out. But at the same time, it's like there needs to be a give and take. Like, I'm going to look like a mess at the end of the day, but that doesn't mean that, like, I equate to maybe a homeless person who's out there on the street. You didn't bring a homeless person in to work on your house. You brought someone in who needed to get dirty to be able to put your home back in order in a clean way at the end, but the optics sometimes can get distorted from the reality that there's some fantastic people in the trades. Yes, there are some people that we look at and we go, they're a piece of shit. But that's any industry. You can look at finance, you can look at real estate, you can look at anywhere. Medical, a lot of doctors hate them.
Your point of entry, though, is easier on construction. That's why I think you see more of those kind of people in construction.
Yes, absolutely.
Because your point of entry on being a doctor, you're like, okay, med school. How many felon drug addicts are going through med school?
Yep.
Your point of entry to being like a grunt at work is just like, can you pass a drug test today? They're like, yeah, I can today. And they're like, okay, do you have some tools? They're like, I have this handy toolkit that I bought from Home Depot where I shoplifted from Home Depot. And you're like, show up tomorrow, and like, your point of entry is great from that standpoint. So that's why you get some of the people. But I think you're right. Like, there's that preconceived notion that, like, you're a drug addict or all the things you said, and it can be like, oh, you're less than, so you're not deserving as much money. Like, why are you charge me this much money?
Yep. Which, and I think in some ways it goes back to, it's like, you can find those people in the trades, you can have them work on your house, on your job, whatever. But yes, your expectation should be what you have of those people. Whereas if you find someone who's respectable, you have to understand that your expectation of their work is going to be higher. Mm-hmm. But when your expectation of the work is higher, that price tag also is going to go up. And rightfully so. That's in any industry, not just construction.
I say hire the crackhead, Hire the crackhead to work on your home, and you pay him little money. And then when it doesn't work and you call me and you go, I had the crackhead work on my home and I charge you more money. It's just mutually beneficial. You help the crackhead get crack. Yeah. You help me fix your home. You paid me. it's just a 3-tier just circle of fixing things. It's great.
Yeah, how many times do you want to buy this? Because you can buy once, cry once, or you can have a crackhead come into your house and steal your things.
Which I think that I always think the buy once, cry once thing goes also to talking to people about timeline expectations. Like I know we talked about that earlier as far as you're going to get into something and find out. But I know that we had someone who would like to make people happy with expectations. So there'd be a general contractor, project manager, whoever would call them up and like they're pissed. Their job's behind. This stuff's not on time. Something's broken. Whatever it is, they need us to fix it. And it's been a while, so they start just tearing his head off over the phone. And so that person would let them know, okay, don't worry about it. Like we've got this punch list, and we're gonna take care of it all next week. Next week rolls around, and we get told, hey, I want you to do the two easiest things because I need you to go to the next job to do the two easiest things to show face and make like you're trying to make everyone happy. Like, hey, we're here. Look at us. We're doing things, but in the end, you've only done like less than half of what you're supposed to do. So and those people understand that after a while, that's dishonesty. And it's not that you showed up on a job, hey, I expected to take this long. You get into something, hey, we found a complication. We did not expect this. I'm sorry. Here's the new expected timeline. He knew how long it would take. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't. So there is a lot of friction between that person and a lot of the superintendents where when we started going out to jobs, we'd be like, there were a couple times where we were a little defiant and we wouldn't leave a job site and we would just get it done. And if there was something that we had to come back for, we wouldn't bullshit anyone. We'd say, hey, that part takes this long to get here. I expect that I can be here at this week. I'll make sure it's on the schedule. And so they're pissed at you that it's several weeks out, but when you show up, like that 3 weeks later on the date that you said, you now became their best friend.
Yeah,
buy once, cry once.
Honesty goes a long way.
Yeah, and especially for that timeline and the expectations.
Mm-hmm. I always hate though when I'm doing a job and I'm like, I give them a price and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be easy. It's gonna take me like 3 hours, and then I tear something down and I'm like, oh crap! I have to now tell the customer, someone before me did something wrong. It's now gonna cost X amount more, and like X amount time more, and then they're like, oh, well, we could have just left it and not done this thing. I'm like, yeah, but you hired me to change something to begin with. Like, you were going to do this portion anyway. Might as well make it right in the whole scenario.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just doing things right and following timelines can be trickier than just, like, trying to please everyone, because that can just be, that's just a trap waiting to fall into if you're trying to make everyone happy on timelines and stuff.
Yep.
One of our old angry superintendents, he... come to find out, right, all he ever wanted was people to be honest with him. And I got to find this out the easy way by being honest with him. And I'm the only person that he doesn't get, like, genuinely angry with. He gets upset on occasion. But when I go and work on, hypothetically speaking, his personal home, and I'm like, hey, this is what the deal is? Okay, yeah, sure, make it happen. No anger, no yelling. Awesome. Great dude to work with. Everyone else, why is he like this? Why is he this way? How often do you bullshit him? How often are you telling this guy lies to his face about what you're going to do versus what's actually going to happen? Oh, it's simple as that.
Yep. You can make people upset in the moment and happy in the long run, or happy in the moment and upset in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Very true. I like this.
I like that.
Where's the tattoo of this?
It's on a coffee mug. It's on a coffee mug.
Yeah.
That's the coffee mug he brings to jobs. He doesn't even drink coffee. He just like brings that in to show them.
Poor little shamrock trucker. Yeah. Something that I've been interested in is a lot of the trade seems to be, I want to say, like the tried and true method of there's a way to build things, right? And just like everything, we've had a lot of, I don't know, like technology that has changed a lot of things. So there's a lot of new ways that finishes are being done. And that happens from like stupid things as far as like the grates in showers, how doors are opened, how the kind of the list keeps growing on a daily basis. I kind of like to nerd out on those things, and I'll follow Instagram pages and see ridiculous things that seem to be showing up at builder shows or in certain houses. So what have you guys seen as far as, like, hey, there's tried and true stuff, whether that's methods, tools, versus stuff that you've seen come out recently that you're like, hey, like, this is new, but this is the shit.
Tools are always, like, new. Like, they're always making better tools. Like, Milwaukee is, like, step their game up with tools, especially for electrical. But, like, industry stuff for electrical, like, everything was new for the last year to me in utility. Like, everything. But, like, talking, like, it's pretty much cut and dry to wire houses. How you'd wire a house, because you have code parameters. You follow the minimum of what you do. This is how you do it.
Well, like, let's even talk about, I think, the LED lighting.
Oh, yeah,
Is a
LED
step
light.
up
Yeah,
for
LED.
that. Low volt.
Yeah. Yeah, all the new low volt lighting, LED lighting, that's a step up. But I mean, even when I jumped into the trade 5 years ago, they were starting to do all that stuff. So like for me, like I came in and you'd see like old lights like this that weren't the LEDs, you know.
What I'm saying though is like if we were to grab someone from the 70s and show them like a can light.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you'd see like
it's a can light.
Yeah, you'd see leaps and bounds in like the technology we have now. Like you can take your phone and connect, like the bulbs in my house are off Bluetooth. I can connect it to my phone and change the color tone, change the dimness. Like we can change it to blue, purple.
You've got integrations in mirrors as far as where it's reflective. In one moment you press a button and now it's a light around the side of it. There's
a lot of safety stuff too with everything now electrical.
Safety.
Yeah, gotta be safe, especially with electricity. Get shocked, Bobby.
I think I looked up. There was like 51,000 fires a year from electrical.
Nice.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like,
Classic.
yeah, that's a safety thing right there. You know, not to get off topic, but just
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
we can talk about safety.
Yeah.
There's a house that I did when I was with the general contractor the first time. We're working on this person's house, and they own a large HVAC company. You know what house I'm talking about? In Arizona. Malachi and we actually got to work on that house together. And the fire alarm started going off while the homeowners were having a meeting with the general contractor. And the homeowner stood up because he owned the HVAC company and walks inside, and he came back out, and he was like, the general contractor was like, hey, everything all good? Like, I'm pretty sure they're just sweating copper. Like, every once in a while, like, yeah, you're going to set off a fire alarm. He's like, yeah, well, in HVAC, the problem you have to worry about is when you're soldering copper in an attic. So it's not that fires get started necessarily while they're soldering. What can happen is if you've got some of that soldering that falls into the insulation, it won't catch on fire right then. Sometimes 45 minutes to an hour later, it will ignite.
So I got a fire watch in the attic.
And burn a house down.
You post a guy in the attic like, you're going to stay here now for the next hour and a half in the dead summer. You're going to watch where I drop this. And you're just like...
Yeah. I thought it was hilarious because he had some stories about that, and I was like, oh.
I sparked something in an attic and caught some insulation on fire.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How'd that go?
I smacked the shit out of it till it went out. We were moving a light fixture like 2 foot away. Like I think the builder didn't center it or something like that. And so they staple Romex in the attic and everything. So I had cut my new hole where it was going to be. I had to reach up with my alternative lifestyle cutters, dikes, and remove the staple. And so you kind of have to like grab just the staple and like on the 2x4 kind of like use it as a lever. Well, I grabbed the hot leg and the staple, and I pinched, and I saw a spark because it arced, and it literally hit the insulation, and I see a little poof of flame, and I am like, I didn't cut through the hot wire. I just like nicked the insulation enough, and I hit the ground and the staple, and it arced, tripped the breaker, but it still caught the insulation on fire. So I smacked the fire out, and I'm just watching it, and I'm like freaking out because I'm an apprentice working with a journeyman. that didn't always like me, and I'm like, oh, yeah, and yeah, yeah, that's fine. And so I was like, oh shit, like I don't think it's gonna keep on fire. So I just kind of sat there and watched it for a few minutes, and then like I spread it out with my hands, made sure I couldn't feel anything hot, and then taped up the wire and put it in. I told the journeyman about it. I was like, hey, this is what happened. I taped the wire up, and he just goes, that's fine. That happens. And I'm like, that happens? Like, that's not a good thing, you know? But
yeah. There's been 2 houses within the last year that I've worked on that the way that they do alternative junction boxes is wire nut them together and then take a roll of electrical tape and just run it around it a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. In the really bad case, what I was told was they, the people that I was working for, the previous homeowner to them had installed fans apparently. This was a job in Goodyear we did together.
Yeah.
They had stripped the Romex, tied in their new wires, and then just covered it all with electrical tape and then hung their fans like that. So their electrical budget jumped through the roof because this is all throughout the house and they had to rewire.
like they spliced, like if it's running like this, they spliced off a T basically on the Romex.
I guess,
kind of
yeah.
thing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so they ended up having to just cut out like everything in the attic and just redo it. It is insane.
Proper. Very
Yeah.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's automotive tier. Yeah.
That's what happens if like someone bought a spec house, and I guess before the person had bought the house though, they had installed like the 36-inch cabinets in the kitchen. They're supposed to do 42-inch.
Mm-hmm.
And so they put outlets above, for the above cabinet lighting. Well, they're like, okay, rip the cabinets out, put the 42-inch cabinets in, and instead of the electrician coming back and, doing it correctly, having to pull the Romex upward, or, okay, we have to tear this drywall down because it's not even sold yet. Like, you could have done this. They just wire nutted it, and they taped it and pushed it to the wall. And so then when the new homeowner that bought the spec house hated the 42-inch cabinets and wants something different, he rips them down, and we see a drywall patch right there. And he wanted the outlets moved again. So we were like, okay, let's move them. So I pulled the outlet out, and I'm like, it feels kind of weird. So then I reach my hand down the wall like 12 inches, and I find just a stack of wire nuts in the wall. And I was like, again, just shortcuts to get it done when they didn't even have the house sold yet. Like, they didn't have to take a shortcut on that, but they're doing something like unsafe that does cause fires in that scenario. But.
Safety story, Louis?
How many houses have you burned down?
Quite a bit.
Have you been shocked?
A lot of times.
You got your eyebrows still, so it wasn't recently.
Back when I did residential, I didn't know how dangerous electrical really was. I would just grab the neutral and the hot and just be like, oh, this is live.
Yeah. I'll just brush them with my fingers to see. I'm like, I think it's dead, but I don't want to go to the panel. I'll just tap them really fast. You just feel a little bite. You're fine. Yeah.
Don't need coffee that way.
We don't recommend anyone else try
We
that.
don't.
No,
Yeah, this is definitely not something that happens on company time anywhere.
No. It's just on personal time when I do side work.
In my own home.
Yeah.
In Minecraft.
Probably my... I think I've told this one before, but allegedly, there was a job that was behind on production. So the windows and doors were sent in pieces to be assembled by the installers, and that meant the decorative grids that had to be put on were not installed on the windows, and they needed to be installed afterwards, which is fine if you have a single-story house. But when you have a house that is 2 stories and very tall in some parts, I think you were at this one for the very end of it, but you weren't there for this part.
Did we work on the bathroom in this house? There was that one door in the bathroom that led out to that hot tub?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, what was that? 8-figure home?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
So allegedly, there was a day when in the stairwell they've got a lot of glass going up there and they needed the decorative grids put on, but there's nowhere to put a ladder. So the way that it was taken care of was the person who was working on it stood up the ladder almost vertically, leaned it against the glass with a piece of styrofoam against it, had to climb up with the grid, have their foot basically bracing on the drywall behind them to make sure they didn't fall over, and set the grids on the 2 windows right there. Basically like you're 14 feet up in the air. And
OSHA.
yeah.
I have a picture. I think I have a picture on my phone of one time.
Wait. Is this allegedly?
Allegedly.
In Minecraft, remember, it's in Minecraft.
This is all entertainment, right? Yeah, we're telling a good story.
Yeah. I was putting new lighting up in a high ceiling. Allegedly.
Someone else is putting it up.
Yeah, and to get up there, we didn't want to get a lift or anything, so we put a A-frame ladder and an extension ladder, tied them together, and got up, allegedly. Yeah. That was not very safe.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever think about like the longevity in the trades? Because there's a guy that we went to church with who
Lost his job to a robot?
no, he was a general contractor for a long time. He was
Busted up after a long time, right?
yeah, he had some like knee issues, especially. But like the dude was general contractor his entire life. He built the church that we were going to at the time. It was very beautiful. Like the guy was just from that alone. He had done very good work. Like he was a craftsman. He's one of those old school guys where they kind of tell stories about like that dude. He was a badass, like, and got shit done. But he was discouraging us from going into the trades because he's like, hey, it's going to tear your body up, all these things, which we've got lots of examples in the trades of how that can happen. So do you guys ever think about the longevity in the trades, how you guys like, obviously there's a lot of jokes or stories about safety, and yeah, at certain points we got to get stuff done. That's part of like, just, you got to be a roughneck sometimes. But there's also that side where you kind of weigh it out and go, hey, I need to make sure that I'm good for the long run. Is there things that you take into consideration with all of that when you're thinking about your job in the trades?
Looking at people in their 50s that are doing the same work I'm doing now, and they look as bad as good as a person in their 80s that did IT or something, man. Like, these guys are rough when they've been smacking things around with hammers or on their knees a lot, crawling in and out of attics, just get messed up. It's hard to see that, and it is discouraging for like a career in trades when it comes to like something where you're not in a nice environment where you're standing upright or you're not sitting down somewhat often, and you're actually crawling around and moving around on the floor of a house. Especially dudes that don't wear knee pads for some reason. I don't know what it is. You're not supposed to wear
Especially the
protective
big
gear.
guys.
Yeah, the heavier set dudes especially. But it's a little discouraging to see that. It definitely steers you away from wanting to stay, or at least me personally, from like staying in the trades for a lifetime. It doesn't seem too appealing. The money's really good, so it's kind of hard to get away. But outside of that, it's, staying in it forever doesn't seem like the best move.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies are, or at least in the union, they're doing a lot better job providing us with the knee pads or with like the stuff that we need to get the job done safely and in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big emphasis on the utility too, just like not only like safety in your work practices, but like safety like in everything you do. Like that's like their number one goal is safety. And so that like it can be annoying, like oh, we have to do all these things, but like when you think about like, because some of them are like, if we just followed common sense, that'd be fine. But other stuff, you're like, well, if we didn't have some of these practices implemented, like there would be guys getting hurt more, there would be problems, and it is a nice thing having that longevity. Like, I would not want to be crawling in attics, doing residential work, roping houses, doing stuff like that, service work in my 50s. But I'm not at all worried about doing the work I'm doing currently into my 50s and 60s. Like, there's guys in their 50s and 60s now doing the work I do, and they're totally fine. Like, they want to retire, because they can, not because they feel like they have to. I mean, but there's always outliers. Like one of my first journeymen, he was almost 50 years old, crawling through attics like a freaking spider monkey, and he was fine. But he wasn't like a healthy dude either. He like vaped like a chimney, drank Red Line energy drinks every day, and he was like 50 years old. But he was just like fine. He's like, his body didn't hurt, he just did it, you know. But then the other guys, they're in like their 30s and 40s, don't take care of their body anyway, don't exercise, don't eat well, doing construction, which is rough on your body, don't wear knee pads because knee pads are for bitches, you know, and all these problems. And then they're hurt in their 40s and 50s, and you're like, well, now you can't have longevity in your career. For me, like, I'm not worried about that at this point in my job. I won't be doing side work when I'm in my 50s. I know that.
Yeah.
I might be like running it, like, yeah, I can get a guy over there for you, but I'm not going to crawl in your attic, you know?
Yeah. Which, and I think for most of us, like, I know, like, we work out. Like, I met you at the CrossFit gym. So there's even the part to that, too, as far as it kind of goes back to the stereotype of the people who are in the trades. There are a good amount of people, like you said, where they're not going to take care of their bodies even outside of work. So in some ways, it's important for us to have that investment of time outside of work to say, hey, I just need to be strong in some cases because we're going to be picking up stupid things. And it's not just that they're heavy, it's that they're awkward. So that if your body isn't ready for that, that's when a lot of like bad things can start to happen. So I think everything to like what you guys said, yeah, there's a lot more safety stuff. There's a lot more attention to that. I think there's some of the guys who are older in the trades that they're hilarious to me on that. I remember being on a demo job that we turned into a restaurant, and it was combining 2 suites into one because they needed the space. And we were just running and gunning with Sawzalls. That place was just full of drywall dust. It was a mess. So I was the guy who was in charge, or whatever that meant at the time, because I was like 19, of the job from the general contractor. So like I had dust masks for everyone, and that was doing demo with me. And the older guys, they'd put them on, but they wouldn't crunch them down over their noses. Like I would even point it out to them, like, hey, like you got to crunch that tab down over your nose, otherwise that dust is still going to get in. And they're like, no, like I can't breathe as well when it's like that. And then when you would go to take lunch, you see these white streaks just down their face. It's like, guys, like we've got the
That was the cocaine.
Yeah, it's a little gravity feeding.
Yeah, so it's like there are safety things too, where it's like, hey, just like everything, a lot of people know, like, here's what you got to do to be healthy. Please just do those things.
Yeah. We have a physical at work, I think every 2 years, because we have CDLs too. So you have to have a physical. We do a hearing test every year. If you come back from being sick or something, you got to be able to like touch your toes, do a full squat with your heels planted. And like for me, I'm like, that's easy. Like the touch your toes doesn't have to be legs straight. You can like bend your knees and touch your toes. But it's like some people can't do that, especially if they're injured and don't take care of their body. Like they're not going to pass a hearing test. They're not going to pass a vision test. They're not going to be able to squat. They're not going to be able to touch their toes. And so it does kind of like, it sucks for those guys that can't, hey, you can't work, but it's like you're a liability if you can't do just basic things to take care of your own body. How are you going to be climbing up and down ladders, getting in and out of man lifts? How are you going to be at a job that is already dangerous when you can't even move your own body efficiently, you know?
Yep.
So I know that's an extra cost. Like small companies can't afford to have physicals like that, checking up on guys like that all the time. So that's like the perk of being at a larger company. But just take
for the smaller companies though, like it's for those guys to, like I'm one of them, it's to be able to say like, hey, to the guys that I'm with, it's like, hey, take care of your body. Make sure like if you get hurt, like if you're coming back, are you good? Like, because if not, then this is we need to get to payday on Friday. I know that everyone's got to provide for their family. I respect that 100%. But you're going to need to provide for your family in 5 years as well.
Do you have to stretch at work, Luis, or no?
We do stretch and flex.
Yeah.
Every morning.
Like 5 minutes every morning?
Yeah.
I've only been on one job site that made me do that. And I was like, when I was quitting the last job to come to the utility. And so I really I didn't care that much that last week, you know, that I was like at that job. So I was like, I was a working foreman until that point. And I was like, they kind of just took me off and they had me there like my last week on this job. And so I was like, I didn't really care that much. And it was the first time I'd been to a job like, all right, 5-minute stretch and flex and hold 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, this is the stupidest shit ever. I'm like, but there's guys that like can't touch their toes. And I'm like, I'm going to go work out later after work. It's just, yeah, the stretch and flex can be ridiculous. But then you think like, oh yeah, there's guys that probably really need this. But some people that even need it think it's ridiculous. Like, they'll be like, oh, this is just stupid. Back in my day, we didn't do this. I'm like, you can't touch your toes.
The guy who walked into the office every day didn't have his boots on yet.
Who? The guy I'm thinking of?
Yeah,
The guy who hurt his hand?
most likely.
Older guy?
Yeah, he'd literally kick his boots into the door of the shop because he couldn't bend over to put his shoes on in the morning. So he'd get in his truck with just the socks on that he wore the night before and drive to work without his shoes on and put them on in the office because he'd be warmed up by then.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
I mean, I'm stiff in the morning, and sometimes I'm like, all right, lift my leg, throw it in the boot, but I got jeans on, too. And I'm like,
Yeah, that's different.
yeah. I'm just never like... There was one guy on a job site, though. He was fat, and he was on a ladder, and he like literally got to the top of the 6-foot ladder, and he picks his gut up and sets it on top of the ladder. And I'm like, that's your work table, man. But someone was like, dude, 3 points of contact. He's got 2 legs and a belly. He can just work up there now, you know? But this guy was like, he was exceeding the weight rating on this ladder. Just
Watching that last rung he's on.
it's just like, it's bowing in the middle. You're like, dude, you're going to fall.
Speaking of ladders and all that, I learned this through the OSHA regulations that ladders, I think it's they're supposed to be rated for 4 times what they're
Oh wow.
supposed to be. So if it's a 250-pound ladder, it's supposed to be able to hold like 1,000 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So OSHA.
Yep. And also, like, with your ladders and everything, like, that's you and all the stuff you're
Yes.
carrying.
Yep.
So, like, if you weigh 240...
If you're trying to load a beam into an area and that beam weighs however much, it's you plus that beam.
Mm-hmm. Also, you don't have... like, OSHA usually, like, requires... I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this. OSHA requires all the stickers,
same for
right?
mine.
Like,
To be visible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ladders, you can just draw on them. So, like, if your weight rating and safety rating falls off there, you can just draw. If, like, we have 350-pound rated ladders, you can just write with a Sharpie 350 lb, and they'll consider that okay.
Which we enjoy.
Yes.
So don't change it.
No, but I'm just like,
Don't question my 800-pound load fiberglass ladder.
I'm just gonna like 1,200-pound ladders. Like, it's ready for 1,200. Like, it just doesn't make sense that they can be so picky about certain things. And then if your sticker falls off on a ladder, you can just write that with a Sharpie, and
Yeah.
then it's good to go.
I'll take it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've crossed the hour mark. So is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Any other topics we want to throw around, or?
Don't buy a car right now.
All right.
Don't buy a Ford.
Yeah. never buy a Ford.
Never buy a Ford.
Do you want to hand over the keys?
That's fine. I'll get an Uber. Or request a Chevy.
Yeah, you can drive my GMC home. He'll let me drive him.
All right. Then we'll bring this thing to a close. Do you guys have anything that you want to plug in regards to social media, side jobs? If you want to drop an email address or phone number, Malachi.
Don't really do social media. I have a Facebook, but if you want to contact me for side work, I'm most of the time up for it. If I can fit it in my schedule, you can call or text me at 480-547-6455. Don't be spam texting me though. But yeah, I'll do side work.
Instagram. You know where to find me. Search it _there. Just posting dumb car stuff and occasionally, lawnmower powered little motorcycles.
Oh, the Colemans and stuff like that?
Yeah. I put a 9-horse motor on mine.
Nice.
It does wheelies.
Luis?
Nope, nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
No Instagram? Nothing?
Nothing.
All right.
Thank you.
He's going to be a private person, the man of mystery.
Yeah.
All right. See what I'm doing in real estate. It's at Thad AZ Realty. For construction, at SITO _building. We hinted at it, or we talked about it last time on the podcast, but Joe and I, and then Mason and Scott, are going to start working on getting some stuff together for you guys going into 2023. So kind of want to tease that a little bit, something for you guys to look forward to. If you guys are even outside the state of Arizona, feel free to get in contact with us either on the real estate side or the construction side. We're going to try and do our best to make sure that you're set up with a good professional who's going to take care of you. So until next time, I hope your hammer stays accurate, your Wi-Fi fast, and your work blessed. See you, everybody.